I explored the Olmec mystery in considerable depth. It's considered to be the earliest high culture of Central America. Everybody's heard about the Aztec.
Archaeological circles are stunned by a leak from Veracruz's research facility. Pattern recognition code, surpassing human attempts, has cracked the Memech language code. This discovery, unlike the Rosetta Stone, heralds something quite different. The translations reveal cosmic patterns, resource maps, and such extraterrestrial logic systems that they're giving rise to unnerving questions. What entities were actually behind these communications? If the Olmec code speaks with non-human logic, then why do their symbols echo across continents and civilizations? Were these carvings just art, or messages stitched into human history? The secret in the machine. Historical records indicate that the initial civilization of Mesoamerica, known as the Olmec culture, existed before the rise of the more widely recognized Maya and Aztec empires. The legacy they left behind is characterized by monumental Colossus stone sculptures and enigmatic artifacts, including peculiar handbags that exhibit remarkably similar features to those depicted in ancient Sumerian paintings. Intriguingly, these similarities can also be observed on pillars located at Göbekli Tepe, which is situated miles away from the Olmec's original homeland. For many years, scholars found themselves perplexed by the symbolic inscriptions that had been meticulously left behind by this long-gone civilization. Initially, most experts assumed that these symbols were simply ornamental decorations with no significant meaning. However, subsequent discoveries revealed that this assumption was entirely incorrect. Presently, something truly remarkable is unfolding, all happening away from the glare of media scrutiny. In clandestine meetings taking place at a university located in Veracruz, Mexico, a dedicated team of researchers has been diligently feeding Olmec symbols into a pioneering artificial intelligence program. This state-of-the-art software surpasses the capabilities of a mere calculating machine. Instead, it functions as a hybrid quantum system that integrates advanced pattern recognition techniques with sophisticated language systems that have been meticulously trained on thousands of ancient Mesoamerican patterns. Unlike conventional translation software, this technology establishes meaningful connections between ancient symbols and various natural phenomena, such as celestial events, agricultural cycles, and cosmic mappings. What began as a modest academic project unexpectedly evolved when the machine started producing erratic and surprising results. Rather than being disseminated through traditional academic publishing channels, the initial findings were shared via coded communications on various academic websites. The artificial intelligence had unearthed something extraordinary. Rather than merely identifying random patterns, it revealed a systematic, intentional process underlying the carvings. As the group read the data more intensively, it felt more and more a sickening sense of foreboding. They were reading words from 3,000 years ago, but the voice that addressed them through these artifacts was unmistakably non-human in timbre. The first major breakthrough was so striking that it was worth rewriting classical works from scratch. The AI could identify recurrent glyph sequences that corresponded with exceptional accuracy to the Venus synodic cycle. These marks traced what scientists called a sun serpent, which opens the Earth 523 times, an exact equivalent of the astronomical phenomenon that would become the focus of Maya astronomy. This one find alone was proof categorically that the Olmec civilization had sophisticated astronomical tracking systems centuries before they were thought to have existed, possibly even a millennium before anyone suspected. But this finding was only the tip of the iceberg. A second grouping of symbols, previously assumed to be purely decorative, turned out to be an incredibly sophisticated calendar system. The AI's conclusion demonstrated that it was able to observe not just solstices, but lunar eclipses too, with precision that would have been staggering even in the modern age. This was not just an astronomical observation, it was a sophisticated astronomical record. The Olmecs were not merely artists, they were scientists who recorded cosmic patterns, timekeeping secrets, and probably even myths that had been transmitted to their generation in their artwork. But just when researchers thought they'd uncovered the Olmec's genius in tracking stars and time, the symbols twisted darker. What if they weren't just scientists, but engineers of life itself? The genetic code of the gods. The results provided a fascinating twist when the AI identified a definite coiled spiral sign. This same sign appeared repeatedly with what scientists cautiously referred to as energy maps or offering tables. This system, while far more sophisticated than mere stellar observation, appeared to be tracking resources, perhaps water resources, mineral resources, or even the flow of some unknown natural energy through the Olmec area. The identical spiral symbol appeared at other Olmec sites at vast distances, showing that they had an advanced, standardized language much larger than anybody could possibly have imagined. This was not only a system of knowledge, but also a science notation for creating their world. But astronomical observations and maps of resources only marked the beginning of their discoveries. The AI was quick to identify symbols that had no relation to celestial bodies or earthly events, but were immediately linked to the control of life itself. This is where the tale started to turn from intellectually fascinating to extremely unsettling. Among thousands of symbols that had been analyzed, one stood out among the research team and shook their ranks. It was a spiral design, but not one they were familiar with. The algorithm always identified it as pointing towards a double helix structure. While it was unimaginable that the Olmecs could have known DNA 3,000 years ago, the symbol appeared time and again in their writings. Surprisingly, the AI traced the occurrence of the symbol in hundreds of artifacts, where it always appeared in fertility, growth, and what appeared to be agricultural lineage tracing purposes. The evidence suggested that the Olmecs were following the trends in plant biological inheritance. In a recently leaked top-secret document, yet another unknown researcher expressed significant concerns, stating, "The statistical consistency is hard to ignore. The spiral appears with quantitative identifiers that appear to track generational shifts, as if they were charting selective breeding schemes. They weren't merely cultivating food, they were actually engineering it." Following this revelation, another intriguing symbol came to light, the stepped triangle encased within a circle. Analyzing the data, the AI produced a heat map that uncovered a staggering correlation. This particular symbol emerged with astonishing frequency in areas surrounding basalt quarries, which are precisely the locations from where the Olmecs sourced the stone necessary for constructing their immense heads. More specifically, this correlation was found to be particularly strong with sites that exhibited unique thermal properties, such as natural hot springs or regions influenced by volcanic activity. The implications stemming from this evidence were nothing short of extraordinary. It suggested that the Olmecs might have had knowledge of, and were possibly utilizing, advanced thermal engineering techniques, even going so far as to employ this technology in order to extract and transport their monumental stone structures. This groundbreaking discovery transcended mere intuition or mythologizing. Instead, the AI unveiled a systematic approach grounded in cold, hard realities that encompassed genetic manipulation, thermal engineering, and even principles of astronomy. Such revelations became the foundation upon which numerous conspiracy theories surrounding the project were constructed. This level of advancement seemed too sophisticated, too alien in nature. It prompted one to contemplate the peculiar pocketbooks that closely resembled those carried by individuals in the ancient Sumerian society. In light of these discoveries, there is now discussion about the potential cancellation of the entire project, hitting the emergency brake. The luck of the archaeological party very literally took a dreadful and unexpected turn for the worse, for they discovered themselves heading nose first into a baffling darkness that seemed to spring up haphazardly and without prelude from out of the ether. It was as though some unseen hand had reached up unexpectedly and flipped a master switch, forever isolating in an abyss of silence what had been publicly touted as the archaeological find of the century, in a hush so deep and overwhelming that it seemed almost tangible, as though one might reach out and feel the stifling quiet enshrouding them. A highly regarded and experienced scientist from a prestigious laboratory located in Mexico City, a man who had dedicated the entirety of his professional life to uncovering and understanding the intricate secrets of Mesoamerican history, took the significant step of officially demanding that all publication processes be suspended immediately. His name, once recognized primarily within academic circles, began to circulate widely in covert communication networks, and this association gradually evolved into something much more ominous, creating an atmosphere of fear that appeared to grow stronger with every single day that passed. In an internal memorandum that was never meant to be disclosed to the public, he articulated his concerns with a sense of urgency and panic that clearly indicated he was struggling to maintain control when he expressed, "The implications are too great to rush this process. The data is not behaving as it should. We need time to know what we are seeing before we release it. We might have made a horrific mistake." But what exactly were they so deeply frightened about? What could possibly drive a team composed of highly skilled and exceptional scientists to intentionally conceal a discovery of such groundbreaking significance? The answer, which was being discussed in hushed tones within a small group of anxious team members, turned out to be surprisingly simple and clear-cut. The fear did not stem from the notion that the artificial intelligence had made an erroneous judgment in its evaluation. Instead, the horror was rooted in a far more unsettling truth. The machine was functioning at an astonishing 100% efficiency, yet humanity was undeniably and unequivocally 100% unprepared to confront the reality that it presented. The central issue lay in the fact that the glyphs encompassed far more than merely the scientific knowledge of an advanced level. They incorporated practical, highly structured, and brutally logical information that decisively refuted everything that modern science believed it understood about ancient cultures. We were not merely discussing some ambiguous, intriguing notes that could be easily dismissed. Instead, we were confronting intricate schematics and precise quantities concerning phenomena that were unimaginable to quantify 3,000 years ago. The artificial intelligence had successfully identified symbols that seemed to signify the exact mineral content of soil measured in parts per million. Furthermore, it uncovered markers that meticulously tracked water salinity levels in estuaries with astonishing precision, and it even appeared to predict weather patterns with infallible certainty and accuracy. Additionally, we encountered yield predictors. These were not simply hopeful prayers directed at a rain god for favorable weather. Rather, these represented advanced mathematical formulas that reflected a profound understanding of agricultural science and practices. As one awed programmer wrote on a secure forum, it's like they were running algorithms. The glyphs represent a specific planting pattern, and if you follow it, the AI predicts a crop yield of over 200%, even in drought conditions. This is not religion. This is a user manual for the planet. They were blueprints, step-by-step instructions for cultivating the land on a scale modern science was only now beginning to contemplate. The beings that had learned this knowledge were not merely living with nature. They were encoding it with a level of sophistication that bordered on the miraculous. This revelation immediately created a gruesome ethical dilemma. The AI was not just translating history, it was revealing a whole map to resources, untapped mineral deposits, massive underground freshwater aquifers, and pockets of earth with almost supernatural fertility that were all still present and still valuable today. The question exploded within the project like a time bomb. To whom did this knowledge belong? Did it belong to the university where the research had been hosted? Or did it belong to the private tech company that had developed the proprietary quantum AI, a company that was already envisioning unlimited streams of revenue? Or did it belong to the descendants of the Memech people, whose ancestors had crafted these symbols? Before anyone could even begin to formulate an answer, the corporate scavengers started circling. Some large, world-encompassing agro-corporations began making subtle back-channel approaches. They had heard whispers, and they wanted in. They weren't interested in history. They were interested in that information about those drought-resistant agricultural techniques and those natural pest control systems. This was information that could be worth trillions in a climate-changing, famine-ridden world. Yet the most disturbing and compromising dispute was surrounding the question of sacred knowledge. Most of these powerful and important symbols were seen in ritualistic use on a variety of objects specifically reserved for use at ceremonial times. What would the consequences be for the world in general and for the people of a particular region in particular if the AI were to uncover and reveal the exact locations of burial places specifically designated to remain unknown for all eternity? What are the implications if it were to correctly translate the very words and complex acts involved in a sacred ceremony? This specific ceremony, a ritual in which the people of today's indigenous regions are firmly convinced holds enormous power and might, is a ritual no one who is not one of their people might ever attempt to enact. As one emotionally intense and irate indigenous rights campaigner put a particular point to the team in a hot and angry phone call, "You are playing with fire." These are not simply symbols. They are the spiritual DNA of our people. To you, in your world of data, it's just information. But to those who might misuse it, in bad hands, it's a tool to use against us. Some things are simply not for everyone to even know. But just when the human drama reached its boiling point, the symbols themselves pushed back. What if all the arguments were irrelevant? Because the glyphs were already pointing somewhere. The gate glyph. The academics found themselves engulfed in a profound sense of horror and disbelief. The corporations, with their considerable wealth and power, were mobilizing to ensure a legal and financial attack to secure their interests, while the native peoples, who were inextricably linked to those lands, were being pushed out of the narrative. It was saddening to watch all that cultural history, prepared for sale to the highest bidder, taken away from the rightful custodians. There seemed to be a mountain of human chaos and disorder, and even as the grand scheme was in imminent failure and distress, the AI seemed, at the time, steady and acute. It had accomplished something significant. It had not merely unearthed maps indicating various resources. Instead, it had uncovered an extraordinary map that led to one specific location of great importance. A location that, according to all existing maps and documents, was inexplicably noted as not intended to exist at all. Among the vast array of thousands of glyphs that had been decoded and carefully examined by the researchers, one particular glyph emerged as especially remarkable and noteworthy. This glyph was not only lovely and intricate in its design, but it also carried an air of profound strangeness that captivated the team. Consequently, the members of the research team began referring to this striking glyph as the gate symbol. The design was an eye-type circle in the middle with two mirrored stepped pyramids that seemed to sink down into the earth around the circle. The symbols were also surrounded by arcs, which the AI determined were solar markers after running some calculations. These markers were precisely tracking the sun's exact position during both the solstices and equinoxes, underscoring their significance. The AI subsequently flagged this particular glyph with the utmost significance, drawing attention to one particularly alarming fact regarding its context. Almost without exception, this glyph appeared alongside what could be deciphered as directional markers and specific geographic coordinates, suggesting a deeper connection between them. As one young archaeologist succinctly remarked under her breath, "Forget metaphors. This thing is literally pointing somewhere," highlighting the practical implications of their findings. With trembling hands, they carefully typed the coordinates into their geographic information systems, each keystroke filled with anticipation. For a few fleeting seconds, there was absolutely nothing visible on the screen, except for the vast and vibrant green expanse of the jungle stretching out before them. Then, as if by magic, a single striking red dot burst forth into existence on the display. This dot indicated the discovery of a previously unknown ridge system situated in a remote, almost completely inaccessible area of Tabasco State, located approximately 37 kilometers east of Levant. This particular region had long been believed to be an empty and untouched wilderness, untouched by human hands. Reacting quickly to this astonishing revelation, they immediately set about outfitting a drone with a LiDAR scanner, an advanced device that employs lasers to penetrate the thick jungle canopy and map out the ground lying beneath it. What came back from the scans was nothing short of astonishing. The LiDAR scans uncovered a massive complex characterized by impeccably straight lines, perfectly right-angled plazas, and enormous circular platforms that had remained completely hidden from sight for over 3,000 years due to the relentless encroachment of jungle growth. Among their discoveries was a central causeway stretching more than a kilometer in length, along with platform mounds that towered over 30 meters high, revealing a civilization lost to time. Field teams were rushed in under astronomically high security, along with armed guards with orders to keep everyone out. Their initial ground-penetrating radar scans, a type of X-ray for the Earth, confirmed what the liar had implied. There were enormous buried structures beneath, and there was more. They discovered hollow chambers, a network of what seemed to be tunnels, and a central structure that gave a strangely dense reading unlike any known stone. They had unearthed a lost ceremonial complex, an entire ghost city that had been concealed for millennia. One of the lead researchers said in a field note, "It's as if it was intentionally designed to be invisible unless you knew exactly what markers and what time of year to look for. Markers that had been sealed up in stone for 3,000 years. Initial dating of soil samples suggested the complex may predate even the earliest known Mesoamerican centers, potentially rewriting the entire timeline of civilization in the Americas once again. The artificial intelligence had guided them directly to the location they were seeking. They had successfully discovered the very place that the enigmatic symbols had pointed them towards with great precision. However, as they stood together at the precipice of the silent and concealed city, the final translation of the gate symbol was just now being transmitted from the laboratory. This translation brought forth an explanation of the true nature of the gate, unveiling a purpose that was not only deeply profound, but also so unimaginable and distinctly alien that it fundamentally challenged the very definition of what it means to be human in its entirety. We have come to the end of our video today. Make sure you like, share, and